Good morning, everyone. I would like to thank everyone for coming to attend our first series of Making Uncomfortable Conversations Comfortable, which is presented by Peace Amongst Youth and Family Services. We're a nonprofit organization that's based out of Atlantic City, and we advocate for families that have been victimized by violent crimes to bring awareness of the need of change and services within the communities that we live in. Today, our series topic is sexual assault, sexual abuse, and your rights as survivors. And our panelist that we have here today is Dr. Gilbert Smith from Associate Counsel, who is also the therapist for our nonprofit Peace Amongst Youth and Family Services. He'll discuss basically the impact that survivors are affected once becoming a sexual abuse survivor and it not being addressed or it going prolonged without receiving the proper services that's needed for them. We also have Ms. Takessa Lee, who is also a therapist that specializes in family services, addiction, and a whole bunch of good stuff. Um, that also, and Ms. Takessa will also speak on the impact mentally of becoming a survivor and the things that's needed to move forward and cope in a healthy way. We also have Mr. Curie Cooper, who is a sexual assault case manager for Avanzar, which is a domestic violence organization here in Atlantic County. And he will also explain what services they offer and to the community. We have Ms. Dominique Townsend, who is a sexual assault survivor, who will speak on her experiences and how she was impacted from sexual assault as a youth and how it's impacted her today as an adult. So we're going to start with Mr. Dr. Smith.
Necessary to have with your child or with anyone who is faced with the difficulty of being forced into a sexual act that they are not willing to participate in. What is the impact? If you ever have an opportunity, I want you to clap your hands, because by clapping your hands, you recognize the thrust is involved in rape, but you would also be involved yourself in the pain that it creates. Many people tend to close themselves off over the years, only to find when they're 20, 30, 40, and in my case, I've dealt with clients who are 80, 60 years of age. Now it comes to fruition, and they don't know what to do. They've tried all their lives to hold it under wraps, and it doesn't work, because eventually it does emerge. What do you need to do with a client, a friend, or more specifically, your child, whether male or female? You need to be very open. You need to understand some of the nuances, and I'm pretty sure the panel has a great deal of experience in that. But in order to really see into this person's life, you really need to take the time to be very observant. You need to understand how this individual takes in information so that you can prepare your statements, your ability to connect with this individual, to make that individual feel comfortable enough to share with you that horrific event. Make no mistake, those who have been violated, it will come to fruition. It will emerge. So be very sensitive, be very alert in terms of the nonverbal. You all are aware with people that you know. You know what's different about them. You need to take the time to involve yourself in a conversation that is less threatening, but more inducive to the individual to want to share their feelings and their ideas. Now, I was asked to also talk about who am I? As I stated earlier, I've been in the business for 50 years. I've done all kinds of treatment. And believe it or not, rape has been a major issue. Just to give you an example, I had a case, guy could not read or write. His wife kept the sex act as a tool to control. Who did he turn to? He turned to a 13-year-old daughter. Of course, telling her not to say anything. How did this daughter react over the years? It was very horrific, very emotional laden, and also subsequently very much problematic for the man who could not read or write, for the daughter who had to experience this situation. So what is it that you need to do? You need to be open. You need to be willing to involve yourself in a conversation, but you need to also understand the sensitivity of this situation in order to reach that individual with the willingness to share. I'm going to pass on to a friend.
Yes, absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Terkessa Lee. I am a licensed clinical social worker who practices out of Galloway, New Jersey. I am an Atlantic City native, born and raised here. Born and raised in Atlantic City Medical Center. I was born there, graduated from Atlantic City High School. So my life's work has been here. It's been a long time coming to get to a place where we're having these conversations. These are very difficult conversations, and when we're talking about culturally and historically, we've been taught to keep these things a secret, to keep them quiet, to don't have anybody in our business, don't bring folks into our homes to be investigating things. We handle everything in-house, which in my opinion, from my own professional experience as well as my personal experiences, has been a very poor way of doing things. So Kelly, I really just want to tell you how much I appreciate and respect the platform that you've created. We don't talk enough about these things, and we don't normalize having these conversations. Dr. Smith gave us quite a good foundation for what it looks like. And for me, when I'm dealing with people, I'm also a school social worker in Pleasantville Public Schools, as well as an in-home therapist, drug counselor. I have lots of hats that I wear in the community. I deal a lot with parents. And when I'm dealing with parents, I think the hardest thing for parents when things like that happen to their children is that we automatically associate our ability to love and care for our child with what's happened to our child. So let me just reassure anybody that's listening, if your child has been sexually assaulted or abused and you were not aware and you're just finding out, or you did find out, it is not necessarily always parallel to your ability to be a loving parent. It is impossible for us to know and see every single thing. So I like to just reassure, because a lot of times we deal with the victims, but also there's a traumatic impact on the parents as well. Your whole life's work, for women, being mothers are paramount, and our ability to protect and provide are paramount. And when there is a breach of security, because that's exactly what sexual assault and sexual abuse is, it's a breach of security. When a breach of security happens, we have to take a look at ourselves and where were we and why didn't we do certain things. And we have this tremendous load of guilt on how we could have done something different. What could we have done different? Could we have done something more? Did we invite this behavior, into our child's lives? And sometimes yes and sometimes no, but I really want to get parents to a place where we are making this conversation very relaxed. Um, it's very important that you leave the judgmental stuff at the door. And it's funny because I absolutely have gotten on my children's nerves, because, I had some traumatic things happen to me in my youth that made me hyper vigilant. So when I had children, it was always, where are you going? What are you doing? When you go, I'm always having this pep talk. Nobody's to go to the bathroom with you. Nobody needs to see your private parts. We called the private parts what they were. When they get in the car, how was your trip? Did anything happen? If you get there and you don't want to be there, you just call me. I'll pick you up. No questions asked. It made me hyper vigilant, but it also made the conversation very, very normal. And one of the best ways to teach children is repetition. We learn how to read, repetition. We learn how to ride a bike, repetition. We learn how to get dressed, repetition. We learn how to braid hair, repetition. So it is imperative as parents, and it's not from a scary place, but you want to make the conversation repetitive. You want to make it repetitive. And you want to ask, and more importantly, because sometimes when we do things, it almost becomes like we're on autopilot. Anything happen today? Or how was your day? And we really don't stop and wait to hear what they say about how their day was. So the most important thing that I can say is when you're making these repetitious conversations with your children, is that you also stop and be present. Because sometimes our babies say things to us not in their voices, but in their eyes and also in their body language. Yes. But if I'm on my phone, oh, Kelly, how was your day? If I'm not looking at Kelly, if I'm not letting my eyes meet her eyes, if I'm not waiting for her response, then it's just me, business as usual. And I want you all to stop doing business as usual. When you have these conversations, when you ask these questions, when you're giving information, I want you to stop and be present. Because we live in this world where multitasking is everything. We don't look at each other in the eyes. We're always on the phone. We've made it now where we're like developing humps in our backs because our eyes are always down here. I want you to practice looking up, looking at your child, looking in their eyes, looking at their body language, looking for things that are outside of the ordinary. And you want to say things that invite a response, not things like, nobody touched you, did they? Because it's all in how you ask as well. It's all in how you ask as well. You want to ask questions. Hey, there's something different about you today. And I'm just saying Kelly because I'm looking at her beautiful face now. There's something different about you today, Kelly. How was your day? And guess what? The awkward silence is okay. It's actually a good therapeutic technique to get the person to talk. Don't feel the need to keep saying a bunch of things. Kelly, how was your day? Yeah, you see how quiet it is? And it felt awkward. But as a parent, make it awkward. Make it weird. It'll prompt them to have some conversation. And even if you're not asking the question, you want to be able to reassure your child periodically, and it's a repetition. Hey, I love you. And if you're ever having a hard time, I'm available to you now. Because I'm a yeller and a cusser. Yeah, sorry, perfect people, you don't want to deal with me because I'm not a perfect mom. I'm a yeller and I'm a cusser. But what I have told my children over the years, listen, if there is something detrimental that you need to tell me, you got to tell me, Mom, I don't need you to yell right now. I need you to hear me. So I have taught them what language to use with me if I am not giving them my undivided and complete attention. So, if you got a mom that's a yeller, you're a little less apt. I don't want to hear her. I don't want her to yell. My kids know that if there's something going on that's affecting their mental health, that they're allowed to say, hey, no, I really need you to hear me right now. And that's my cue to stop whatever I'm doing, whatever I'm going through, and to be available to them. Okay, so I just really wanted to make that a point. And I also want to just talk about trauma. With trauma. Why are you giggling, Dr. Smith? I know. This is one of my mentors, so he over here joking me because I get to be on the esteemed panel with him today. But one of the things about trauma, and I'm just going to I always give a quick lesson about what trauma looks like. So there's a certain way that our brains process what we call normal information. We see things, we process it, and we figure out a way to deal with it. It's a whole thing that our mind does. And we'll just call that, for people who live nearby, we'll call it the Black Horse Pike. Our mind goes down the Black Horse Pike when it's normal, okay? And when there is a breach of security or something that happens to us that is traumatic, our Black Horse Pike route becomes this crazy thing, and we hop off and we get on the expressway. And when we get on the expressway, we cut out vital steps because our mind is saying that there is something that we need to do right now to get us to stay alive and to be in survival. And we often call that fight, flight, or freeze. I'm pretty sure you've all heard of that. And the mind makes a quick decision, but it cuts out vital things on that Black Horse Pike, and it hops on the expressway. Okay, just so we can get through that moment. It may be so if I'm in a situation and somebody's coming to be aggressive towards me, we're not even talking about sexual, just any type of breach of security, So I might think that my brain may say the best way to get out of here is to fight your way out. Okay, it may be someone who's coming towards me and wants to harm me. And my brain may go to the expressway and say, okay, we got to run. The only way you're going to get out of here alive is you got to run. And then there are things like sexual assault. Somebody's, there's a breach of security and somebody's forcing themselves on you sexually where you may freeze. And your brain says, we're just going to stay here. This won't last forever, but we're going to get you out of here alive. And people tend to associate freezing with being scared. No, freezing is a survival thing. So now that we know what trauma looks like, let's talk about, post-traumatic stress. What it looks like is if there's a smell, if we see something, if we hear something that reminds us of that event that took us on the expressway, our body has a physiological response and puts us automatically back on the expressway, even though there's no real danger in sight. So I need you to understand that they're not being dramatic. It's not, oh, they can't just get over it. It takes, seriously, it can take years and years of therapy to get a person to what we call cognitive restructuring, to get their minds back to living and driving safely on the Black Horse Pike and keeping them off of the express route of thinking when there's no real danger in sight. So it's very important that we understand what trauma looks like, but it's also very important that we understand that the conversations with your children need to be repetitive and that you need to be present and you need to focus on not just what they're saying, how they're saying it, their tone of voice, their body language, okay, and what they're saying in their eyes. So that's what I have to contribute to today. Thanks.
Good afternoon. My name is Curie. However, a lot of people can't pronounce my name, so I am known in the community and in my agency as Mr. K. The agency that I work for is formerly the Atlantic County Women's Shelter. However, because we don't just service women anymore, we're now a VANZAR, and that just simply means we're moving forward with diversity, equity, inclusion, serving the LGBTQIA+ community, males, females, and children. And one of the things that I definitely want to explain is sexual assault has many levels to it. Sexual assault simply is when someone is being abused when they are unwanted, and it's either physically, it's visually, and it's verbally. And a lot of people don't understand that visual is one as well by sharing pictures, sexting, or either pornographic videos. That's one that is left out. But child abuse falls under that, and that is child sexual abuse, and that's for anyone that's a minor. Over the age of 17, then it goes. And then within that, there's incest, there's intimate partner violence. There's a lot of different levels with that, and there are warning signs that people will try to give you and that you can pay attention to. Like if there is something with a child, their normal behavior, which you were once used to, now starts to become altered. You'll see them regress. They're no longer expressive. Their light starts to become dim. Their language has started to change. Their dress has started to change. They're expressing outwardly what's going on inwardly, and majority of times they can't verbalize what's going on inwardly because their parent will not understand, or they feel as though they will be judged or blamed. And that's a lot of things that I notice when doing my counseling and having clients. It's the blame game. They blame themselves. How did I do this? How did I get into this? Why did this happen to me? When in all actuality, it's not your fault at all. And that's something that they need to understand. It's the alleged perpetrator who preyed on you for whatever reason they felt as though you would be weak. And majority of the times, contrary to popular belief, you're not assaulted by someone that you know. It's normally a stranger. Now, if you are assaulted by someone you know, then that falls under incest. But however, a person that does the perpetrating is something going on with them inside of themselves psychologically that makes them, because they thrive off of that. They get their drive off of that. That's why they become serial rapists. So it's not necessarily the victim. And that's something that I really want to convey to people. If something did happen to you or something has happened to you, you can't question yourself, because questioning yourself will only make you doubt yourself. Doubting yourself will only make you want to regress. Then that's when anxiety, depression sets in. And then next thing you know, you forget all about it. But however, one of the things that I love about our agency is we offer what we call SARTs, which are sexual assault responses to the hospital. And in that, we also have a forensic nurse examiner. So if there is something that you believed, we cannot confirm, we cannot deny that you were sexually assaulted. What we do is we go off of what it is that you present and what's going on at the hospital. Our advocate goes and our nurse goes, and you go through the full exam. Either you can have us in the room or not in the room. We can't tell you whether you were or we can't tell you were, but however, what we do is we support you through the entire process. You do not necessarily have to get police involved. You don't. We have a process where if you were sexually assaulted and you consent to a forensic exam, we give you a 5-year grace period for you to come back after we obtained everything, for you to decide to say, okay, I'm in my 3rd year and I keep rehashing this. I'm having triggers. Every time I see a gentleman or a female that has that scent, I automatically go back and I'm not figuring out what's going on. We also offer counseling in reference to that. And one thing that I also do want to clear up is it's not just women who are sexually assaulted. There are males that are sexually assaulted, but however, males do not necessarily feel comfortable coming up because they feel like they've already been demasculated. And then to relive it again, they're also demasculating themselves again. But one of the other biggest communities that are sexually assaulted is the LGBTQIA. They make up over 87%, and it's mainly those who are bisexual and transgender. Those are the targets in that particular community. But however, everyone just associates sexual assault just with women, and that's a misconception and a myth that needs to be cleared up. One other thing is that sexual assault and domestic violence go hand in hand, and they intersect. A lot of people don't get that and they don't understand. Yes, you are married. However, in your marriage, if you choose to tell your husband not now and you do not want it, and then you guys get into an argument and he decides to say, you ain't shutting the garage down on me, it's mine, I can park there at any time I want to, that's sexual assault within a domestic violence situation, because he verbally abused you. So that's domestic violence, and then he sexually assaulted you and took what he felt as though was rightfully his. And a lot of people don't understand, how is it that a husband can sexually assault his wife, or how can a wife sexually assault her husband? So there are a lot of rights that they do have. However, it's not taught. It's not put out there, and that's one thing that I like about Evanzo that we do. We offer teachings, tutorials. We offer education on human trafficking. Human trafficking also encompasses modern-day slavery, and commercial sex work. We also have a program for fathers or men who have been abused and or are abusers. It can be court mandated, but it also can be free of charge if you just want to take it. And that's a 6-week course that we do offer. So there's a lot of things that we do offer. However, it's not put out there. So if any questions in reference to anything that has to do with domestic violence, sexual assault, child abuse, displaced homes, because we also have a shelter in a non-disclosed location for those who have been victims of any of that. Then we have reentry programs as well. You can give us a call at 609-646-6767. That is our 24-hour hotline. You can also call there, and you can also get counseling on the spot or an advocate. So it's 609-646-6767.
Good afternoon. My name is Dominique Townsend. I'm the Vice President of Peace Amongst Youth and Family Services. And I'm also a recent graduate with my master's degree in social work. And I'm just going to speak about being a child of sexual abuse. And I grew up where cousins, it was normal for cousins to stay over. My mom had like an open house for us, so family was always welcome. And we were told always to, listen to your cousin. They're not gonna say, they're not gonna tell you nothing wrong. So this is just me kind of reliving, because when I even hear the word sexual abuse, it takes me back. When Curry brought up pornography as being a visual of sexual assault, it was a trigger for me. Only to say, we were when the abuse was happening, it was mainly during the daytime when my mom was at work and my older cousin was watching us, and he would tell like my cousins and everybody to go outside and go play. And I didn't think it was, I never thought it was unnormal, because he was my cousin. He was, he was watching me. So if he told me I couldn't go outside, then that was, I couldn't go outside. Like, I had to listen. And what he told me to do was what I was told to do. So not only, he never, I want to say penetrated me, but he used to make me suck his penis or watch pornography with him. And I never said nothing to my mom because I was scared. I was a scared child that didn't know. Give me a second.
Sometimes what you see today is very, very important to those who are observing. This is what happens when you have a deferred emotional reaction to a situation that has occurred over the years. That's what I was talking about when I said when you close your hand, that is what happens. You shut down, and over the years, this is no longer able to hold down the emotional impact, the trauma. And eventually what happens is that this begins to open and feelings begin to emerge. And this is what you're seeing. This is what you're seeing now. You see a young lady who this incident has happened years ago. But over the years, you shut down, you place it behind a door, an emotional door, and you hold that door shut as long as you can. And as you become older, your strength, your emotional strength to hold that door closed begins to weaken. And eventually, you're faced with a situation, you're faced with a thought, you're faced with a TV show, you're faced with relationships that you don't understand why they are so chaotic. And yet, when you see it, when you're young, you could hold it down. Oh, but as you become older, now you can no longer hold it. And now you're confronted with reality that occurred years in the past. What do? You do exactly what you are doing. Now, most people know I'm an ordained deacon as well. I'm a cussing deacon. I got to say that too. But,
Yes, he is.
but I'm truly a believer in God. And here's what I'm going to say. That if you, no matter what age you're in, have the opportunity to share your story to someone that you trust or someone that you can help, you're not only doing favors for yourself, emotional favors, but you're also helping someone else. And I'm going to stop here and say to you, what you're doing today is it's emotional stress that is being released, but you're now in the process of becoming better, and you're also in the process of helping others. Because that's what we're designed to do. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There are 10 to 12 people in here who are designed to help others. Well, you can't help others unless you've been through something. The more you're through things and realize and begin to accept those things as reality, and when you begin to share, you will reach out. And yes, you will cry. Yes, you will wail. You will do all of those things. But it's like a cup. You're full, and guess what? As you begin to pour that liquid out, you become better. Because now you can fill that cup with other things. Passion, love of others, love of yourself, love of your children, love of the United States maybe, or your community. So continue on. Don't back away. It's hard. We all know. We all know. We didn't get this far by luck. So go on, girl.
All right, so
Hold it up so we can hear you.
here we go. But I never talked about it. I was faced to be around this family member for years. But then my mom, she moved us to a different neighborhood. So it was kind of harder for family members to come over. So I didn't have to see them as much. So life just started to change. So I just feel as though like I didn't need to talk about it. I didn't need to like bring it back up. But it wasn't until this family member became displaced, and my mom opened her home back up to him. Obviously, she didn't know what was going on, and I had my daughter, and I became overprotective of her, especially when he was around. So when it was time to watch the kids, and then I felt like I had to start becoming overprotective of my siblings, where like if my little brother wanted to go upstairs, I'd be like, no, you can't go upstairs. Like you have to stay downstairs. Like, you cannot go over him. Or he would try to pick up my daughter to play. No, don't play with me. Don't touch my daughter. Like, and it was always like kind of awkward. And it was like you couldn't be yourself in your own home. So then I felt like I had an opportunity to leave home when I was going to move in with my kid's dad. And it wasn't until one day, I don't know what he did, we was just having a conversation, and I just broke down to him. And he looked at me, and he was like, did you ever tell your mom that this happened to you? And I was like, no. I actually never told nobody but you. And he kind of looked at me. He was like, I can't go to sleep until you call your mom. So you have to tell your mom what happened. I was like, well, what if I want to tell her? Like, it happened when I was a kid. I'm 18 now. I'm grown. And he was like, no. So I had called my mom, and I said, Mom, can you come down the street so I have to tell you something? And she said, why can't you tell me before my mom just come down the street so I could talk to you? And it was in that moment I actually told my mom what happened, and the look on her face was, you could tell she felt like discouraged, like she had let me down, because she always was like, I could talk to her, I just never did. And I said to her, I said, Mom, I don't want nothing to happen to him because something is wrong with him. Something is mentally wrong with him to be able to do that. But it wasn't until I got older and more educated to know that something was mentally wrong with him to do such a thing. And the conversation became easier for me to talk to my daughter about it because it happened to me. So I always talk to her like, family members are not always correct. If you feel like something is wrong, then you don't need to do what they say. And I always just had that open communication with her since she was a child, since she was little. Like, this is your private part. Nobody's to touch it. Nobody needs to go to the bathroom with you. If you need help with something, you can wait. Like, the bathroom thing, you go by yourself. Like, I was just always overprotective of her with that. But I became grateful that I was able to have those conversations with my daughter. My son is now 3, and I'm happy that I can have that conversation with him as well. Like, that's your penis. Like, we don't play that. I don't play name things. Like, you need to know what that is, and that at 3 years old, you don't need nobody to go into the bathroom with you. Like, you don't need nobody being there with you. You can handle it yourself. So I think it just made me a better, to me, a better parent in forms of communicating with them. And not to say that I didn't have that when I was little. It was just, it wasn't normalized. It was nothing that, it was talked about. And I feel like it was time to change that generational curse, change that, because I I don't want anything that happened to my children, where they can't open up or talk about it, or come sit down and be like, "Mom, this happened, that happened," but it made me realize that family members do pray, and you have to be careful. Even though you said, like, most of the time it don't happen in the families, that statistics, I didn't know that, because I guess for me it was like, oh, family members would do it to you before a stranger would, because of just of what my experience was. So, but I just always was overprotective, and always, like, didn't let my kids stay out. If they stayed out, it was only like certain people who they stay with, and I have to really trust and love you to even let my children stay at your house. So I'm learning and growing, but I'm definitely a better person. And if I see my cousin today, I still speak to him, but he kind of know, like, I don't mess with you like that, like, and I pray for you. But I see him now; he's mentally in a space where he needs to go get help. And I pray for him, like, I watch him, and I still love him. Like, to say that's still my family, I still love him very much, and I look at him, and he's very bad on alcohol or whatever else he's doing. And I'm like, those are demons that he is fighting. So it's nothing that ever could have been done to him that he's not paying for now in his life. So that's just, my outlook on being just a survivor, just talking about it. This is my first time ever talking on a platform in this environment about what happened to me. But I feel like the more people who do talk about it, it could touch more and more individuals to know that you're not alone. And you could be sitting next to somebody that it happened to, and you would never know. That's all I have for today.
Oh, just real quick, it got real thick up here. Oh yeah, it got real thick. But you know what? The conversations like this get thick when it's real. When things that are disingenuous and that are scripted don't have the same impact. And it's funny because while you were talking, Dominique, and I've known Dominique for several years, I think, and I always go back to parents. There were some things, there were some breaches of security in my life when I was younger, and I had to just understand it. I had to understand it. The way I'm very simplistic in my thinking. So when I try to explain things, I explain them in a way that people can relate to. And I related to, like, as far as parents and protecting children and normalizing this conversation, as parents, we only can do what we know and what we grew up with, what we have, And so, Dominique,
You can only do what you know.
yeah, you only can do what you know. And Dominique, I want to say to you, that you are in a position to teach your children something totally different, and whatever Kelly's mom taught her is what Kelly came into motherhood knowing. And then she had you, and you come into your own. And how I explain it is that, do we remember, like, before the internet got really big and it was just DOS, when you first had DOS, and how you mess up something, you hit the floppy disk and you lose everything, but you was doing stuff with Moses on the mountain with the little stone and stuff. But I always use that as an example when I talk about how we learn and grow through generations, because look how far we've come from DOS. We've come from this thing where we lost everything at one miskey to now we can type on live documents on Google. Okay? And and I use that example to say that each generation gets better if we are open to teaching each generation to be better. And sometimes, I think my biggest thing when I talk about parenthood and motherhood and how I was raised is that I had to just really respect that my mom only did what she knew. But I also had to understand, you have a mother who has learned a lot, who is progressive, where there are lots of people who have experienced what you've experienced and do not have parents who are progressive and who are willing to let go of DOS and move up to like Google Docs. Okay, I use it. I make that similarity to see the difference in the technology, and it doesn't mean that these parents don't love their children. They're just operating off of old systems that are no longer relevant. They haven't put in the updates. And I'm going to say to you, Dominique, I'm very, very proud of you. For one thing, it takes a lot of courage. It takes a lot of courage to lay it all out for the world to see. But you're going to feel a different sense of freedom because you have done that. Because one of the things that keeps us in mental bondage is the shame and the guilt and the fear that we don't even rightfully own. That's not for you. And that you're going to continue to heal and peel back layers, and how phenomenal it is for you to have experienced something so gruesome, but yet you still have a heart to help people, and that you have dedicated your time, your effort, and your money into a lifetime of service. So I absolutely have so much respect for you. I've had respect for you anyway, but I have more respect for you because it takes a lot to want to give when something so precious has been taken from you.
Real quick, I believe in positive affirmations and reassurance, and that's something that I do with my clients. So I want to applaud you and tip my hat to you. One, because you have the ability and the liberty to express yourself in your own words at your own pace. You've accepted it, you've acknowledged it, and you know how to move on. I'm a church baby like the ordained deacon over there, and you're the cousin deacon, and we believe that we're overcome by our testimony, especially the words of it and the way we express it. So because this is your testimony and you expressed it that way, you have overcome, and now you've equipped it other boys, men, women, and girls to have an understanding that this too can pass. It will pass. If that was her test and I am in this test, I too can have a testimony, and I may be going through something that's fiery, but on the other side, I can still come out and be something beautiful. Through is it.
What's left? I don't know what's left. I walked in. No, I feel like I seriously, because I was listening on the way in. It was on Break It AC, so I was listening, and I was like, "Wait, God, are you putting me there? Like that's the assignment for today?" And I just got done working. I seen 3 clients this morning, and I wasn't, when I was listening and I was listening to the content as a trauma survivor and now a trauma clinician, I just feel like I can leave all that book stuff where it is this one thing I do want to mention is social learning theory. We learn by how we're socialized. And like Takessa said, when you think you hear, I watched this baby grow up, and while she was growing up, my kids were also growing up. And I didn't want to have the conversations with my children about things that could occur because I was too scared that if I spoke it, it would become. But now I think about, I wish someone had spoken to me, and I realized I had to socialize my kids into health and wellness. So I socialized them into that. And even when I was in school and going to school, I never, I learned a lot in those books, but I said, this is what you need to survive. And what I did was I normalized the conversations that were not normalized. And I'm going to say it, our people, our community, we like to cover things up, because we want to save such and such, and we want to save this one, and we want to make excuses. But that's why we can't grow as a people. And we can't grow past the trauma. Trauma is an incident, but the remnants of it last forever. It lasts forever. So I don't care how far we go. I was just talking to someone, and I was saying, yeah, I thought after I had finished school and got all these accolades that I was going to be good, that I was going to be able to be in that relationship and function and not sabotage and not ruminate in my thoughts and not be suspicious. I thought I was going to be able to do that, but what I realized was that I just moved up in my trauma. I didn't get away from it.
It elevates.
So it take you to a new level, right? Because well, wait, but they say new levels, new devils, right? So what happens is, like the doctor said, you get that scent, that music, that person, that word, that phrase, that trigger. So your triggers, You know, they just grow with you. But the one thing that you have is you're healing because you're talking about it. Like someone said, you got to bring it out. And sharing your story is a part of your healing. It may not change what occurred, but it helps you deal with it better. And it helps you understand that you move out of that role from victim to survivor. Because sometimes people get comfortable in the victim role. You know, I thought I wanted to be a victim for a long time because it kept my defenses. I could block you away. I ain't got to deal with you because I've been a victim. But then when I realized that I don't have to minimize my trauma to survive and come up. And that's what we have to do. So what you're doing is amazing. I mean, I was always fascinated. The first time you reached out to me about becoming a social worker, I was like, whoa, like, you know, but like somebody said up here, it's only good if you got a backstory. You got a backstory because, I mean, you can go to Rutgers or go wherever you want to go, Stockton, wherever, but you want to learn. But if you got to feel what you're giving. If you don't feel it, you're not helping. You gotta go through some things. You got to feel a twitch. I tell people as a clinician, if you haven't cried after at least one of your sessions or during, go back and do this again. Because I'm going to tell you right now, many times I had to turn my camera off like, hold on, this is a bit much. We in the valley. So I commend all of you for doing the work and doing the service, and I'm sorry I was late. But when I was listening on it, I said, oh, I just know. This is the assignment for the day? I said, well, all right.
First of all, I have no idea how in the heck y'all use all this computer stuff. I am still paper and pencil person.
Oh my God, Dr. Smith.
I am 77. I ain't act like y'all.
77 years young.
Hello, honey child. I can still dance now.
You give me 55, Pops, though. You give me 55.
Let me say this, though. In the 50 years I've been a therapist, one of the things I hear here is that we're always willing to do this, to talk. One of the reasons I stay connected to that woman over there is that she's moved from talking to doing, just like you. Like you and like you and like you. We collectively need to pull together because there are many whites, blacks, Hispanics, and etc. who are in pain. Now, many of you may not have, had clients that are Hispanic or Chinese, Asians, and I've dealt with all of them, Asians, Mongolians. I've had a wide range of experiences. And do you know that pain has no boundaries? And I'm going to not talk much because I get excited and I'll start doing some other stuff. But I'll leave you with three things I teach my clients. One, to thine own self be true. Shakespeare said that, and he was right. You need to be able to look in the mirror and like what you see. And if you can't like what you see, you need to ask yourself why. Or ask us another thing I teach people, and that is to ask themselves, who am I? Because if you cannot define who you are, how can you become what you want to be? Who are you? Hard lesson. I had to learn that the hard way. To thine own self be true. And that's what you're doing. That's what everyone else has done. Because you have to look in the mirror and see who you are. Because, see, the mirror reflects exactly who you are. It won't lie, but you will lie to yourself. Because if you cannot see who you are, and I'm very serious about this, you cannot help other folks to get to where they want to get to. Now, I've lived long enough than anyone on here. I've done a lot of stuff. And believe me, if you do not, or if you have not had, and you're right, some life experiences, you can do all you want. I have a PhD with 20 years of college, 20, either certificates, and I got a long list of things. Don't mean squat. Can I say squat? Okay, squat.
That's a little bit better than the stuff you usually say. We can do squat. We can do squat today.
You got to cut that out.
Well, it's live. They ain't gonna cut it out, sir. And it's live.
But But you have to have life experiences in order to gain wisdom. And if you don't learn from your life experience, you will repeat it. And I'm saying that directly to you. All of us have skeletons in the closet. It's only when you pull them out, you look at them, you accept them for what they are, then you can determine what you want to change. We all have skeletons. The old folks used to say, what does it say? Not skeletons. Yeah, they have skeletons in the closet, but they also say, you know, let's just keep them there. Then wind up that their kids had the same situation.
Right.
It's only when you bring them out and you face them and you see it as a reflection that it could be possibly you, and you decide that you have to be different because your generation that you're bringing in has to be different. That's what gives you confidence, gives you strength. I'm going to stop talking.
I just want to say one more thing. This is the second or third time I've been on the panel with this man. He always brings out the old school proverbs, the old words. And what I like about being on the panel is with him is that there's nothing new under the sun. Black people been hurting for years and centuries and decades, right? But one thing he said was you got to be true to oneself. And I was just telling somebody this the other day. When people look at you, they see the tree. They don't see the root.
Hey, now.
I don't even think most people are concerned with what's at the root. They just want, long as you can benefit them and show up for them, you can show up for them. But sometimes I'm telling you, I'm here to tell you today, I'm not a preacher, but I like when they say that. I'm here to tell you today, you might not be able to show up for other people. You got to show up for you first so that you can heal. And just like grief, there's no time frame. It really upsets me when people say, well, how long should they be grieving? And there's no time frame. And there's no time frame on healing. I don't care if your situation was domestic abuse, financial abuse, homelessness, oppression, systematic oppression, workplace oppression. I don't care what it is. It doesn't even have to be as severe as sexual abuse. You cannot put a time frame on someone's healing or how long someone is supposed to hurt or how they're supposed to come out through the wash after what they've been through. And I think that we need more therapeutic settings. I think our churches need to be more therapeutic. I think our workplaces need to be more therapeutic. I think our homes need to be more therapeutic. I'm going to say it again. I think our social media profiles need to be more therapeutic. I think we need to be more understanding of people. And you never know what someone's roots. I'm going to tell you, Joe Scott said your roots are dug up. Yes, dig mine up. You're going to see some things. You're going to see some things, but I own it. And we have to own it. And you can't fix it unless you own it.
That is one of the primary things that I teach my clients in session is that you can't fix what you don't own. And if you can't look and see what your life looks like without anxiety, without depression, without grief, if you can't see what that looks like, then I can't help you because we're ultimately just driving a car with a blindfold on. We're not going nowhere. You know, and I firmly, this is one of the biggest things that I teach my clients who have anxiety and who have depression and who are overwhelmed and have trauma. Say no. You don't have to show up to every event. You don't have to help every person in distress. You are allowed to be present for yourself. And I make that is a way of life for me. You know, my children know, don't breathe loud after 9 o'clock. Because from 9 o'clock to midnight, that is if I want to cry, if I want to watch TV with cuss words in it and nudity, if I want to, listen, I'm not talking to the perfect people. I'm talking to the regular people. I don't deal with the perfect people. We not never a good mix anyway. But if I want to watch TV, if I want to take a bath, if I want to get on the phone and FaceTime and chop it up with my homegirl and talk about ratchet stuff and reality TV, I am more than just your mom. I am a friend. I am a sister. I am a therapist. I'm a social worker. drug counselor, in-home therapist, business owner. I am a community servant. I am many, many things. Being your mother is an honor, but I am so much more than that. And every moment of my day cannot be spent looking into your wonderful eyes. I need some downtime. And I don't ask for it. I demand it and I take it. I'm a bully about my private time. If the Lord is not about to take you and it's 9:01, I don't want to hear you breathe loud. I need a minute. I don't talk to my children about problems of the day the first 30 minutes when I get home. I need a minute. So, because if I start dealing with their problems as soon as I walk in the door, guess what? I'm still processing and decompressing from work. I'm not fully present. And we all know I said when you talk to your children about their day, you need to be fully present. Well, I don't get fully present until minute 31. The first 30 minutes, I don't have anything for you. Can I take my shoes off? My pinky toe is throbbing. The shoes hurt my feet. I need a couple minutes. But I teach my clients that it's okay to say no and that you don't have to be everything to everybody all the time. We get this, and I really get annoyed culturally with us. There's this thing, and I guess there's a couple things that I get annoyed with in my culture. And I love being black, but I don't believe in black girl magic. There's nothing magical about me. Everything I've done is not a result of some unexplained phenomena. No, it's six figures of school debt, trainings, and work on the job experience. So I'm not magical, and also this superwoman complex that we just have to do, and I don't got to do everything for anything. And I will say no, and I don't feel compelled to say yes to you the first time you ask me to do something. So I have big discernment about what I'm going to give my emotional and my physiological energy to. And I don't think that people learn to do that because where everything is hustle, bustle, fast paced. Answer it now. No, I'm not doing that. And then for me, I don't feel compelled to explain why because my no is sufficient. It's just no. So those are my little nuggets for how to maneuver. Say no sometimes. Take some time for yourself. Don't feel compelled to have one aspect of your life to be the whole centerpiece of everything. You're allowed to be more than one thing.
I'm just going to end with this. I agree with Dr. Smith said, but I'm a firm believer that life is defined by the experience we go through, but it's both equipping and enriching by the impact it had on us in that experience. So I'm a firm believer in four things: healing yourself, learning yourself, loving yourself, and then sharing yourself. So I'm healing from whatever it was that I went through. And after I went through it, I'm learning everything that I learned in it. Now I'm going to apply it to where I'm going now and love myself even more. And once I actually love myself, I can share everything that it was that I went through with another person. And then I can share myself because I've now owned and accept everything that it was.
There's something I need to say. I try very desperately not to talk much today. Let me give you both, everyone, a little scenario. Life is built around limitations, barriers. And most of us, you were right, most of us set barriers for everyone but ourselves because we don't know. I want to help my daughter. Now, I raised 7 children. My youngest is 55. But there are limitations. And when they were like this, we had in our family, no one could leave the house without letting someone know. That was a rule. That was a limit. All of my daughters, if you want to go out, if you don't have any money, you can't go. That was a rule. For myself, and I am the man of my house sometimes. Hello? But she knew I was not going to leave my house and not come back. I wasn't going to stay out all night. Limitation. We all live in limitations and barriers. What I find that many clients don't know their barriers. And when they get involved in relationships, particularly men or women, You know where their barriers are? All over here. So they can't put a structure. They don't have a profile of what it is they want, what it is they need in order to be able to move to the next level. So what do? They take anything, any Tom, Dick, or Harry that comes along and try to make that a reality for their passion. I know you're getting ready to close, so I'm going to close. I can go on forever, but I won't.
Unless you buy me lunch.
I wa-
No,
I want to thank all of you guys for participating with this our little round table talk with no table, but just with our first series of making uncomfortable conversations comfortable. This is just the first of many, hopefully. But right now, we're going to take a couple of questions from the online audience to see, just if they have any questions, give them a little insight on maybe something we missed.
Well, one of the things that we talked about when we were planning this was the children and how parents approach the subject. But also, what would your suggestion be if they find out that maybe a child molester lives in the area or was arrested and may have had contact with their child? How would you suggest parents approach that subject?
So, one thing, I work with small children, and one of the groups I do with the kids is just basic body safety, right? My body is my own, how to protect my body, like Dominique said, how she teaches her kids. Basically, as a parent, you would always start with the baseline education. Because what you don't want to do is teach children how to stigmatize. We know this person's there. As a parent, it's your job to protect. But if you teach your children basic body safety, I think that they can make the decision, okay, this is not appropriate, this is appropriate. So it's my body. You can go online and find numerous resources on just teaching children basic body safety. What are safe boundaries? I think it starts like anything else in the home. You have to teach your kids in the home. It's not up to the schools or to the community to teach them. It's for you to teach. So as a parent, exercise that time that you have in them car rides and say, you know what makes you feel safe? What is a safe adult? These type of conversations need to be baseline, household, kitchen table conversations. And then if something in particular happens with like a neighborhood safety concern issue, then you can address it from a different, standpoint or from a school standpoint. However, but I do think that basics, back to basics, teaching your kids at home what their body safety procedure should be, what is a safe body, who can touch, like safe touch, bad touch. All of these things need to be basic, baseline household conversations.
And let's give these body parts appropriate names. It's not your cookie. It's not your flour. I remember my aunts used to call our even though we didn't have breasts, they would call them raisin cakes, which I thought was really weird. But let's give the body parts appropriate names. Let's normalize just asking the questions or just talking. Like Tanoa said, just having conversations. And I said it earlier before she got here. It's repetition. What makes the conversation significant, it makes it click in their brains, is that it's repetition, and that it's calm. It's calm. And even if we suspect that there is some breach of safety, because that's exactly what it is, a breach of safety, parents are to remain calm. Because what I realized long ago is if I'm super worked up and anxious and in a frenzy, it just further makes a bigger breach of safety for them. So it's very important that we just remain calm, that we ask the appropriate questions. But, I can't say it enough, being able to identify what the body parts are, asking questions, giving them information, small talk. It was, I actually, when my daughter was like 12 or 13, we had like the talk, and it's weird, but we sat in the car, we drove down to Blackhurst Pike saying all the inappropriate names for the body parts, because I don't want her getting excited when she hears it. I don't want her feeling like, it's like, no, they're going to call it this, they're going to call it that, they're going to call it, and I'm not going to say it because we're not editing, but I made her say it, like, that's what it is. This is what they're going to call it. These are the appropriate names. Yes, you can get pregnant if you have sex standing up. Like trying to just dispel all the myths because teenagers tell teenagers these little wacky stories and they believe it. And yeah, but one of the basic conversations that I had with both of my girls was that listen, I'm available to have these conversations and you don't have to rely on your friends to give you information because sometimes they don't have accurate information. And I just made it a comfortable place to talk about it. I don't tell my girls, ooh, boys are yucky. I don't do any of that to try to scare them away, from anything. No, it's a natural reaction to be attracted. I spend my time teaching about self-respect, you know, safety, health, those things. I don't spend time trying to persuade them not to like people because we're humans and we're not meant to be alone. So those are some of the things that I do.
Going back to the question, yeah, it's definitely normalizing the conversation. But what I find out dealing with the younger ones is it's the right question will give you the right answer. And majority of the time, what I do with mine is I give open-ended questions. So I'll ask, do you know so-and-so? Oh, paint me a picture. How you met so-and-so. Oh, what was the experience after that with so-and-so? So I leave it very wide, very vast, and very open just to give them the leeway of expressing how whatever it is. I never lead the conversation in anyone that I'm talking to. What I do is I follow because in leading, I'm going to take you somewhere where I want you to go when you don't want to go there. But yet when I'm following you, you're going to get me to where you want to get me to me when you want me to get there. So it's all about asking the right question and having the proper approach.
Circle of trust is another thing that I do with the younger kids. I just take a piece of paper and draw a circle. Who's on the inside of the circle? Who's on the outside? Right? Circle of trust, safety circles, little things like that you can do with kids at the kitchen table. You don't have to be a clinician to do so. I think that parents need to become comfortable, like this whole time, comfortable with talking about uncomfortable things. So.
I agree. I mean, you have a wide range of approaches. I think one of the greatest things you can do is understand your own comfortability. It's not about you. It's about saving your child and giving them good information. I'm a biologist by nature. So I sat all my girls down when they started having periods and et cetera. I think they shouldn't say periods. When they had their cycle. And I drew what a penis looks like and I gave it a name. D-I, whatever the other parts of that. Then I said, this is what it is. And I wrote it out. And they said, Dad, oh, and I said, don't give me that. This is what it is. This is what a vagina looks like. Being a biologist, I knew all of that stuff. I was young then. I drew all the ovaries. I drew the womb. And I said, now listen, this is what's going to happen. Man's going to ejaculate, and guess what? You can get pregnant if your cycle is not pop. Of course, they want to say, oh, Dad. Okay. Don't come to me saying that you don't know. Of course, I didn't say it in that tone. So I think you have to be comfortable enough with yourself to be able to convey that kind of information. And you need to be realistic. Because what you're doing, you're saving your child for being influenced by someone, a peer, who may lead them down the wrong road. And I do the same for my granddaughters. You'd be, oh, pop. Yeah, okay. This is what it is. And so you have to feel comfortable. I'm not going to say much more because I talk too much. But I'm going to say this. I do teach people. Okay, I'm ready to quit. But let me say that. Look, I'm going to say this for everyone. Relationships have two things in common. It has a purpose and a duration. Once the purpose is made or completed, the relationship either changes or ceases to exist. And that is very, very true. You need to remember that because once you're dealing with kids, they have relationships outside of the family. And if you have not built a good, solid relationships with those children, that, or your husband, or your girlfriend, or whomever, if you have not built a solid relationship with them based on understanding who they are, how do they take in information, well, all the other things, then when they step outside, then they are faced with trying to figure out what a good relationship may or may not be. And I'm going to stop with that. I will say to you, thank you for the opportunity. And to the panel, the intellect on this panel is unbelievable. I'm just hopeful that I can reach your level of understanding.
Oh gosh, I'm trying to be like you when I get grown.
And I will pass the mic on.
I just have one more question for you guys. For the parents, what would you suggest for parents to do, or once they find out that their child has been sexually assaulted, be it if they found out in the current state, or unfortunately in my situation where I found out 20 years later? Like, as a parent, you're stuck. It's like, what do you do? Where do you go? And what is the right or wrong thing to do at that time?
Well, I think Takessa, okay.
Be calm. Just understand where the child is coming from. So in our situation, I really just wanted my cousin to get help. I didn't feel like a jail shit I was gonna do him justice. I didn't feel like anything happened to him was gonna do him justice. So being understanding of where the child is coming from. Every child is not gonna feel the same of how I felt or how I took in the situation. So I never felt it was my fault. I never blamed myself. I always knew as I got older that it wasn't me, it was him. So I feel like just taking the kids into consideration is when making these decisions, because at the end of the day they have to testify or relive their story when they may not be ready to.
I'm just sorry, real quick. If it's in the current state, you definitely call your authorities. You call DCP&P, Division for Child, what is it? Division for Child Protection and Permanency. How can I forget them, my friends? Anyway, definitely call. And then, you have Perform Care Services out there. You can connect with the school and resources. But one of the most intricate things is to listen, to understand, not listen, like the gentleman said, listen to lead. Listen to understand the child. Listen to validate the child. A lot of times the kids don't even get validated because the parents are dealing with the guilt and denial. So validate your child, right, wrong, or indifferent. Please, I understand this happened to you, and I'm sorry, and I hear you. Validation, because even as an adult, to be unvalidated can be crippling. So first we need to validate, but definitely call your local authorities, and definitely go up the chain and get what you need for you and your child.
That moment. Many times it takes you to just hug the person and say, listen, I don't know how you feel, but I care for you. You're not at fault. Give me a hug. Let me hug you. You have to extend yourself to that individual. You're right. Because whether it's 20 years, believe it or not, whether it's 20 years or 20 days, you know what you need? Sometimes you need someone to come up and say, give me a hug, let me hug you. Because you need to understand that you're going through a lot of situations emotionally. You're dragging up the past. It's like a drudgery. Yeah, you need to just hug your daughter and say, listen, I am so sorry that happened. Give me a hug. Let us hug each other and talk with passion, with understanding. And you can say, I really don't understand. I don't know how it happened. But you got to give your heart.
Can I tell them what not to say?
Oh, yeah, don't do that.
So let me help y'all out real quick. And let me tell you what not to say. And this is more so for, I think we've covered the children. Let's talk about the adults. When your adult children come to you and tell you that there was a breach of safety in their childhood. So let me tell you what not to say. Why you ain't say something? Let's not say that. Because if it was that easy millions upon millions of children would say something the first time that it happens, and it would probably be down to zero because perpetrators would know that people would tell. It's not an appropriate question.
That's
So-
actually called victim blaming
Yes.
and shaming.
Hey, I like it. We gonna put a name on it. I just don't like it. Why you ain't say something? Well, what you want me to do about it now? Well, I think you should go to counseling, and counseling is good, but the appropriate thing to say is what he said was very paramount. I'm so sorry that happened to you. And what you can do after that is, what can I do to help you as you start to peel back the layers of this traumatic thing? I wish I would have known. What can I do now to help you as you start to move through this thing and sift through it? You know, what can we do? And when you say we, it sends the implication that we're a team and that whatever you're going to do to peel back the layers, we're going to do it together. You know, so we definitely want to do any victim blaming or shaming. We don't want to make them, well, you know, you was so fresh and you was so, I don't care. That's a whole nother thing, that we associate how we dress on how, if they deserve to be assaulted in some sort, you know, so things like that. So we need to be very careful that we do.
Yeah, this is my last thing. Please be aware of your rights from being sexually assaulted, sexually abused, or domestically abused. You can go to the hospital. You don't necessarily have to go straight to calling the police or straight calling DCF. You can go to the hospital, and there's something that Avanzar has implemented with the hospital. We have our own exam rooms. We have our own nurses. We have our own team that comes in to make sure that you're comfortable, to make sure that you're dressed. We have legal advocacy, and if it's a child, we also work with the county prosecutor's office because we do county-wide and also statewide. So there's a lot of rights that are unbeknownst to a lot of people, but going to the hospital in an instant like that, in the emergency room, they will let you know we have a safe space for you that's separate from everyone, and we will call the SART team or the DVR team if that's what you wish, and the advocate, the nurse, the counselor, we all come out and make sure you're comfortable and that you are aware of everything that is due you.
I would like to thank all of the panelists for coming out today and enlightening us on, you know, the different services and the different techniques that we can take home to assist our family members and sometimes ourselves. That's once we've experienced any type of sexual assault. One thing I would like to close out with along with the mental assistance and services that is available, there's also a fund called Victims Compensation that our community has. You know, we're rarely informed of these services that are available to us. So once you become a victim or a survivor, the Victims Compensation Office is located in the prosecutor's office of any of your counties, and they're called victim advocates. And their job is to assist you with anything financially that you need. You get relocation, you get therapy for yourself and your family. So they're with a lot of assault victims that the assault is happening in home, you know, there are ways to get out. You know, there is help out there. You just have to apply, you know. Avanzar, I believe, is well-rounded with victims compensation. Peace Amongst Youth, that's kind of how we started off, was to bring awareness to the community of what services are available in the process of getting it. And I just want to thank you guys for coming out. Thank you, Ideal, for hosting this, Ren. I appreciate you guys for giving us this platform to be able to do this. And hopefully we'll have many more to come. We have a lot of topics. Most of them are on-hand experience because it's a lot of conversations that we just don't talk about. And we talk about amongst ourselves that, as you can see, once you speak about it and bring it out to the open, it's more than us just going through it. So, you know, thank you guys. I appreciate you, and hopefully we'll see you soon.